let's get rolling. So we are on session 4 of our Train the Trainer session. And so here is how we originally laid this out, and that I said you would all go through as if you owned a business. You have your business profile, then we would learn the content, and then we would deliver the content. So we're here. And what I realized is that, we're going to train you on this content now, but it would be like 3 months later before you would deliver it. So with all of yours kind of, I don't know, permission's the right word, but as long as you're okay with it, our next session would be presenting. So we'll learn the 1 hour session now, and then in a month, we'll present that session. Then we'll learn about valuation prep and sell sheets, and then you would present that. And so just you learn it, you kind of have a month to get comfortable with the material, and then we'll break out into breakout rooms and present the material to one another. So unless I get a lot of pushback, that makes sense to me. So hopefully you're all good with that. Anybody have anything they want to say? Cool. Our sellers working group is like 8 hours worth of content, and I want you all to have kind of 3 1-hour sessions that you can present to your constituents and members and that kind of thing. So we're whittling down the content to make it the most relevant for sellers. And I felt how to get ready to sell, understanding the selling process, kind of the basics and beyond evaluation, because that'll help a seller understand what they can do to get their business ready to sell for more money. Kind of then once they have that, getting it on the market with a sell sheet and selling strategies, financing options, including the realities of seller financing, and then legal considerations. Those were the topics that I felt were most relevant and critical for sellers. If you all have different thoughts, certainly feel free to share those thoughts with me, and we can adjust accordingly. This 1 hour session that you all will be able to deliver, obviously we want to provide an overview of what CBIT's doing in our region and all the great work. I think it's super important that the sellers understand the selling process at a 10,000 foot level, helping them understand what they can do now to get ready to sell their business at some point in the future, kind of with their goals and values and such in mind. And then I thought, even if they don't participate in another session, they have a solid foundation of the process that gives them information to ask the right questions of their support team, their accountants, attorneys, that kind of thing. The hope is that obviously they would continue on to other sessions, but who knows? And so that was kind of my objective with this first 1 hour session. And certainly feel free to jump in with comments or insights and that kind of thing as we go through. Our agenda for today, we're going to go through kind of that material that you'll present in this 1 hour session. This is, what we talked about with preparing, cleaning up your financials, understanding the basics of how to value, training your staff and management so that you can go on vacation and a buyer isn't, they know the business isn't contingent upon you for the success of the business. Overview of the selling process, and then the intro to valuing, and then we'll talk about how we're going to do our next session. So here's where we'll kind of move into the content. I will shortly after this, I'll share this deck with you. I have a instructor's guide. I use the term loosely. I'm not a training specialist, but I have an instructor's guide that I'm putting together to accompany this, and some review materials, and we'll have some sessions to go through the content if you have questions and that kind of thing, just so you know. But you can take notes as we go through if you'd like. But what is CBIT? I think we're all familiar, but it was important for anyone that we're engaging with to know what CBIT is, kind of who we are. We're this dynamic kind of virtual organization. Here are some statistics around the realities of baby boomers and their impact, and what CBIT is trying to do with regards to the types of transitions that we want to support. And we'll learn more about the intergenerational and the conversions to employee ownership throughout the course of this training. And just kind of the fact that we're here to support our sellers and we're here to support the process. There's an entire network of folks that can support a seller. And the fact that it doesn't happen overnight are pretty key things. It takes a long time, preparation, and all of that. So I think it's important for sellers to understand some of the realities of the marketplace. 20% of businesses that are listed actually sell. That's the bad news. The good news is that the sellers are taking steps to understand the process and hopefully control some of the reasons why businesses don't sell. So here's a poll. We've done this poll. Ask your sellers, select what you believe is the top reason why businesses don't sell. And you can ask them to just think about it and that kind of thing. And the number one reason is unrealistic expectations on the part of the seller. This survey showed 33%. The pros in the industry say it's as high as 50%. Yes, it is someone's life's work. Yes, it's profitable, but if it doesn't cash flow and it's priced too high, the business isn't going to sell. Number two is lack of buyer preparation. And one of the things we talk about through this is because the seller gets more knowledgeable and acquires more knowledge, they can then impart that information to the buyers, so they can kind of help them through this. So again, the concept that it's by taking these steps, they can increase the likelihood that they'll be able to sell their business. Preparing to sell. So I have inserted some videos here, and they are largely for you, but if I will include these links if you would like to include them with your sellers. And this is just about getting ready to sell. I've obviously talked a lot about this. I thought there would be helpful to have some supplemental content that we could go through.
Kim, we can't hear it. Did you hit share sound?
Okay, so I did this before and I said, alrighty, I must have to redo it every time. Bear with me here. I was so proud of myself. Okay, share sound. I think that's it. Let's try that. Oh,
and who to get to help you will quickly get you up to speed. Some business owners focus on presentation, but it doesn't take much to discover a business's real worth. Now, for this reason, putting a final effort into getting everything shipshape before you sell is always a good course of action. So track your sales in detail. Do it by product, service, and method. Repeat sales through advertisement, promotion, specials, etc. Know your marketplace. Take copies of articles about your industry, your competitors, and your customers. Understand your outgoings. Be ready to explain changes in sales or costs of goods, as well as unusual or one-off expense items. Keep track of all your costs. Be able to itemize your salary, benefits, profit sharing, and any other perks that you take out of your company. Your business plan. Dig that business plan out of the bottom drawer and refine it into a professionally presented document. Properly researched areas that have proven problematic in the past so you can present the buyer with a ready-made plan for addressing them. If you haven't got a business plan, don't shy away from the task of making one. It does require a bit of homework, but it helps buyers to understand questions and to identify potential opportunities for a new owner. I'll link a video up here that will help you write a business plan. Get your paperwork in order. Have all the paperwork ready for your accountant and your business broker. Remember, you don't have to reveal everything at once to a purchaser. Certain confidential records, contracts, statements, etc. will not usually be shown to a buyer until an acceptable offer has been signed by both parties. The usual documentation that you'll need Comprehensive financial statements, certainly for the past 3 years, a current year-to-date income statement, records of accounts receivable and payable, details of any loans, mortgages, etc. owed by the company, by the business, an inventory of all plant and equipment being sold, a schedule of any building or equipment leases, contracts with existing suppliers or customers. You'll need to list any patents, trademarks, copyrights or license agreements, and of course, you'll have to have all your employee agreements ready. So here's some helpful hints. Be prepared to recast your financial statements. Many small businesses show, well, little profit, and that's good from a tax point of view, but not so good when working out the value of the business that you've built over the years. You want to show buyers your business in the best possible light. So have your accountant recast your financial statements to reflect adjustments for what you take out of the business in terms of salary, healthcare, car expenses, and other perks. Now, this can be especially useful when dealing with a buyer who wants to operate the business as an owner-operator. Now, there are many facets to selling your business that you just won't know about. A good business broker.
Okay, that's him. So some insights on some things to do. And again, you can choose to include that video or not include that video. A lot of the concepts we talk about throughout our program, but this idea, like, buyers are definitely going to want to go deep into your financials. And if you haven't done a great job of maintaining them, right, they need to. So tighten up your financials. If you don't have monthlies, create them. That was an issue that I had, is I had annual financials, but I needed to go back through and create my monthlies because my business was fairly seasonal in nature, and I knew someone would want to see that. And this idea of going to the next level of financial detail. I have a seller right now that, look, this is breaking out. Go to the next level of detail so that you understand your profitability, your margin by either line of business or product, that kind of thing. I have a seller that has 2 locations and only wants to sell one of the location, but the financials aren't separated. Obviously, that's a problem because you need to be able to create a value for a particular part. That concept, make money on paper. Banks are very conservative. They will only use the tax returns. And so you, as a seller gets ready to sell, they just need to take less out of the business. We'll talk about at some point, there's versions of sellers' discretionary earnings, this concept. And as the seller, they'll put all kinds of stuff back in, the add backs. A buyer will disallow some of those, and a banker will disallow even more of those. And so as a seller gets ready to sell, they should consider running less of that stuff through their business. Yeah, that's kind of this idea that if you run less of it through, you'll it just makes the valuation, the financing options better. Train your staff. Buyers don't want to buy a business that is 100% contingent upon them for the success. So train your staff to manage your business, go on vacation so that you know. So overview of the selling process. You guys have seen this many times. It doesn't always happen in this order, but generally speaking, these are the items that need to happen. And I had this whole script, and then I decided that it's probably easy for all you all to have some notes that support each of these sessions. They're going to want to build their team. An accountant's the most important. Engage with an accountant early on. The accountant will help them through all kinds of issues. The tax liabilities are one of the biggest. I can't tell you how many sellers I've worked with that didn't understand the tax implications of the sale of their business, and they got whacked with huge tax bills. And there are, you're always going to have to pay some taxes, but you can work with your accountant to hopefully minimize those tax issues. They're going to make decisions around whether or not to go to market anonymously or full disclosure. Obviously, full disclosure is easier, but it's far more disruptive to the business, particularly if their business has a handful of customers that could get spooked, some key employees that could get spooked if they learn that the business is for sale. So it's this dance that you have to do around when you go to market. Is it going to be full disclosure or anonymously? Obviously, you're going to need to establish about help. We collectively will work with them, but understanding how the valuation is done and the different elements that need to be valued just helps them get ready and establish a value for their business. And in the next session, we'll dig more in on valuation and validating that valuation and all that stuff. Sell sheet, that's the marketing piece, pretty straightforward. And I think what I'm going to do is put a sell sheet guide together that you can share with your clients, because the material is really pretty straightforward. And I think that's probably a better way to approach it. This is what it looks like. You all know this just will give them an idea of, it's a resume for your business. These are the kinds of topics that you're going to want to address and put that together. You're going to do your marketing. The marketing can obviously take old school approaches, new school approaches, but it's just important to understand that obviously you need to market your business, and the whole anonymous or not will have a huge bearing on whether or not how you want to go about doing that. Hopefully interested buyers will turn up, and in order to make sure that a seller is engaging only with truly interested and qualified buyers, at the outset in their marketing pieces, I would recommend that they have respondents in their replies to any pieces that are out there, marketing pieces, discuss their capabilities to buy the business, whether it's down payment capabilities, a summary of their skills and experience in your field, and that kind of thing. And that way the seller can start to assess whether or not this is a legit buyer. Is it a tire kicker? Is it a competitor that just wants information about their business? Just again, that initial vetting. The non-disclosure, I think we're all pretty familiar with non-disclosures, but seller may not be, but just this idea that you're going to open your books to them. It is mutual in nature because, again, this idea of vetting the buyers, you want to ask the buyer to share personal financial information, be it the credit score, a personal financial statement with documentation, and that kind of thing. So you can make sure that they are, again, qualified to buy their business. Initial evaluation that a buyer is going to do is going to be, as was noted, based on those financials, likely 3 years of financials, including tax returns. And they may ask for additional information, or that may happen during the due diligence period. But just being aware that having tight financials and tax returns ready to share with prospective buyers after you have that NDA. The letter of intent is the next piece that would generally come through. It outlines many of the key components to the sale, purchase price, what it includes, payment terms, the timeline. And you'll negotiate back and forth, but get as much of the conceptual aspects of the sale covered in that letter of intent, and go back and forth, because it just helps to cover as much of that upfront as possible. Then once that letter of intent is signed, there may be earnest money, there may not be. My experience is generally there is. That puts you into that exclusive period that we've talked about, where the seller promises not to engage with another buyer during that period of exclusivity. But then you go into the due diligence, which is this deep dive into the business, helping the seller understand that process and what's involved, and just getting ready for it helps move the sale along. And the seller definitely wants to make sure in that letter of intent that due diligence period is time bound, or that it could drag on for a long time. There may be a negotiation that goes on based on findings that have come out during either the letter of intent and or the due diligence period. Financing, the financing can kind of be happening at any point, but definitely would be happening here. We'll discuss financing quite a bit in session 3. But again, this reality that 80 to 90% of small businesses are for sale with some aspect of seller financing. And we'll just kind of listen to a quick video about, no, not that one, this one.
If you're planning on selling a business, you probably hate the idea of seller financing or holding a note for the buyer. Let me tell you today why you should warm up to that idea. But first, a little bit about me. My name is Brett Sankis. Well, and I've got clients all over Startup Shepherd. The links to both those websites are in the description. Now, seller financing and why you should warm up to it as a seller. 3 main reasons. 1, higher purchase prices. I read recently a business broker survey that said the average sale price for a business where the seller helped carry back financing is 15% higher. So larger purchase prices. Okay, that holds true as well. I know realtors who sell commercial property, who sell land, who tell me all the time that you're going to get more money when you structure a more creative, favorable deal for a buyer. Number 2, you increase your pool of buyers. That might be one of the reasons that you get a higher purchase price, because you've got more competition. You're increasing the number of people that can get a deal done through you. Number 3, there's interest on the note, and that might have favorable tax consequences for you to get that paid over time rather than right up front. Talk to a CPA, yada, yada, yada. But the point is, that's another reason to consider seller financing. Don't categorically write it off. It can make a ton of sense. It can help you get a deal done. It might be something you need to do depending on how in demand your business is and what your market is like. Now, if you do it though, some really important things. You want to be as secure as possible in that note. If the buyer has other financing, and they often will, it may not be possible to secure the note, meaning to tie the payment of the loan to assets and to put a lien on those assets, the lien of the business you just sold. That's ideally what you want to do. If the buyer is getting financing, SBA loan or something, they're going to have a first lien on the assets. But you need to figure out whether or not that's available and lien anything you can. It's way, way better to have leverage of security in the form of assets, to have your loan be tied to it. So you want a secured loan, not a blank, not just a regular promissory note if you can. And if you secure it, you've got to file your lien, which is usually done at the Secretary of State in most states, depending on what the assets are. But the point being, look for security first if you can. And then, you want a relatively quick payback, and you want a high interest rate. That makes sense, and that's all negotiable. But again, sellers, I know, because I see it all the time, want no part of seller financing, but you've got to realize it's not just a give. There's a take there. There's some real strong benefits to considering it. I'm curious if you've sold a business.
All right. So again, just like the benefits of seller financing makes a lot of sense, and encouraging sellers to consider that. And we'll kind of talk about more about that in session 3, and you'll be able to go through it in more detail with your clients in session 3. Eventually, you're going to need a contract. This is when their attorneys get involved. And attorneys are awesome. They have their role. You want to engage with your attorney. They want to engage with their attorneys as little as possible. They bill at $300+ an hour. And so sometimes attorneys want to get involved in the negotiation. I recommend against that, because you can negotiate and you can work with other people in your team to do that. Who drafts the contract is often named in the letter of intent. So hopefully it's not your attorney that's actually drafting the contract, because it's just more money. Sorry, I keep thinking of you guys as sellers. Hopefully their attorney is the one, and encourage them with this contract. That just think of every possible scenario and every single thing that needs to be addressed in that contract. The devil's in the details. And I had a situation, I think I've shared this, with layaways that wasn't covered in our contract, and it got messy after the sale because it wasn't in the contract about how we were supposed to manage these layaways. And so we kind of had to feel it out, and it wasn't very good for me. Oh, and then you actually execute everything, you sign mountains of paperwork, and then the business is sold. And it feels good if that's what you've been hoping for. It is a process that takes time. What we share our general timeline, because we include kind of preparation time and everything else, is we say it's 3 to 5 years. It varies wildly. It could be a month to many years. Just once, I think that number is once you've decided to pull the trigger, it can go kind of quickly. But here are some different scenarios that could kind of speed up or slow down the process. Again, the owner financing, business only, it can happen fairly quickly if you're not getting bank financing. If a seller is hoping for all cash at the close, which requires financing, it could take longer. And if it's a transaction that will involve business plans and multiple lenders, just be prepared that it takes months just to get the business plan. Banks and lenders have meetings where they discuss these things, and just be advised that it can take quite some time, and they should plan accordingly. And but it does depend a lot on the circumstances of the sale as to how long or short it takes. So our intro to valuation, again, it's important for sellers to understand the process so that they can make choices now about either how they're going to run their business, or I've worked with sellers that when they had a number in their head, and that number was going to allow them to retire. And then you go through the valuation process, and that number isn't what they were hoping for. And it really, if they were expecting to retire in a year or two, but the nut that they get isn't going to support them in retirement, they need to make choices. And so understanding how to value your business as early on as possible is really, really important. The valuation is the sum of the parts. We'll talk about in a sec what parts we're talking about. And it can be a really complicated process depending upon what your intention is with the valuation. And there are times when an expert is involved and they cost a lot of money. Here are some examples where the type of valuation that we are going to do with our clients is a rule of thumb valuation. That type of valuation doesn't work if, and these are some examples of when many $1,000s valuation needs to be done. This idea of transitioning to stock ownership. If a business owner wants to gift their business to their children over many years, if there's some sort of divorce and there's a transition, they will require a certified business valuation expert or an accountant to do those types of valuations. But we just want to do a valuation so that a seller can get their business on the market for fair market value. And that obviously fair market value here is, I love this, it's the capitalism at its finest, right? It's like what a seller wants, what a buyer is willing to pay when they come to an agreement that is fair market value. So again, just this idea that getting back to many of the reasons why businesses don't sell is, the seller wants too much money for their business, and it won't work. There are a number of components that need to be valued. You could ask, and in my little instructor's guide, I have questions that you can ask of your sellers as you go through to just kind of get them thinking about the different aspects of their business. Goodwill, inventory, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, other, and that leads to your total price. So goodwill is that non-tangible aspect. It's the toughest one to value, but that's the process that we go through, and we're able to assign a number to that goodwill. Inventory is the stuff that somebody has for sale, the retail stuff they're going to sell. Some businesses are going to have a lot, some are not going to have much at all. The FF&E is the stuff that you use in the course of running your business day to day. I have a canoe outfitter, and canoes are part of their FF&E, which you might not think. It's not just your point of sale system and your office equipment and stuff like that. I'm in a situation right now with the folks that bought my business. They moved out of our building, and the analogy that we use with FF&E is if you could take the roof off the building and turn the building over, all of the FF&E would fall out. So it's anything that's not permanently attached to the building. So anyway, just a way to think about it. There are some other things that that might need to be valued, such as website. If there are certain contracts, permits that add a significant amount of value to the business, you would just want to make sure that that you talk about those as well. And it will lead to a total valuation. And that valuation is likely going to have a range. I think we've started to talk about this idea that even the goodwill of a business can have quite a range. And when you include these different other aspects, the inventory, FF&E, and that kind of thing, it really, and you're going to have kind of a best case scenario for your clients, and then they'll need to understand kind of what their walk away number is. And in my opinion, it's really important for them to understand that going in, because it can get emotional, and then your logic and reasoning don't run as well. So I think it's important to understand that before you kind of get into some negotiations. And then you have this idea of real estate, and there needs to be a separate valuation for the real estate and a valuation for the business. Now, I know I have a client that bought a business, and when he bought the business, the real estate was like 1.2 million. And so that real estate value included the goodwill and some of the other things. And sometimes that is the case, sometimes it's not, but just this concept that the real estate will be valued differently from the business, and a seller may need to think about different, whether or not they're willing to sell the business without the real estate and rent to a potential buyer, because the real estate is often some of the highest priced pieces of the valuation. And you may have a buyer that comes along. That was my situation, where they could afford the business. They couldn't afford to buy the building. They had a first right of refusal, but we sold them the business and then rented the real estate to them. So our intro to valuing goodwill, right? It's this kind of not wacky, but it's like this intangible thing that's based on your reputation, your profitability, and things like that. It's the hardest part to value because there's nothing there. But it's very doable. Like, we've gone through the process. You can sit down with your sellers and help them do that kind of recasting of financials, and then I would work with them, or if I'm not available, even just helping them go through their financials and understand what is their benefit, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They could then turn that over to their accountant, and it would help minimize the fee that would be charged. But hopefully you'll be able to work with me. This is this idea of seller's discretionary earnings. You take the net profit of the business, you add back for certain things, and that gives you your seller's discretionary earnings. Yeah, and here's another just a quick video. I thought this was a good one because I've talked about it, but very often it's helpful to hear it from a different perspective.
About it every day. Perhaps you've thought about selling your business, either to retire, to relocate, or to take on an entirely new challenge. I can't help you decide when the time is right for you to sell your business, but we can work together to determine the approximate value of your business in today's marketplace. And that basically comes down to three very simple factors: the nature of your business, the annual revenues of your business, and seller's discretionary earnings. If I lost you on that last point, seller's discretionary earnings, don't despair. we're going to walk through an example to show you exactly how those are determined. Seller's discretionary earnings sounds like a complicated term. In fact, some brokers use the term adjusted net, some use SDE. I prefer the term owner benefits. It really refers to the net profit or loss of a business with certain add backs, such as amortization, depreciation, compensation to the owner, a health insurance plan, a car payment, even a cell phone payment. Any expenses that are a benefit to you as an owner are added back to determine total owner benefits. The easiest way to determine the value of your business is to compare it to other similar businesses that have sold. It's very similar to what a residential real estate agent might do in preparing comps if you decided to sell your home. When we talk about comparing your business to other businesses that have sold, I use information on the database of the Business Brokers of Florida. We have information on thousands of business sales. For instance, if we look in our database for pizza stores that have sold, I can do a search and I find 241 pizza stores that have sold in Florida. And I can sort this information by the sold price, the annual revenues, or the owner benefits. And that way I can narrow the results to closely mirror those of your business. Okay, let's walk through an example of how we determine an approximate value in today's market. We work with tax returns, profit and loss statements, and other financial records. Tax returns are the highest and best evidence, and I know you'll find this shocking, but not all business owners report all income on their tax return. But for an example, let's say that you have a pizza shop with $500,000 in annual revenue. Let's say that this pizzeria had a tax return profit of $30,000, but that doesn't represent the total owner benefits. I'd make several add backs. For instance, if the owner was paid $30,000 and the business had $15,000 in depreciation, add perhaps another $15,000 for amortization. Then I'd look for other common add backs, such as meals and entertainment, health insurance, a car payment, or a cell phone bill. Whatever business expenses benefit the owner, we add back. So you can see that when we total these, it's easy to have owner benefits of more than $100,000. Our Business Brokers of Florida database reveals pizzerias in this range sold for about 1.4 times the owner benefits. This would put the value of our example at about $150,000. Once we determine your owner benefits, I can provide you with the lowest, highest, and average prices paid for businesses like yours with similar revenues and owner benefits. Pricing your business correctly is key to generating buyer interest. Buyers shy away from businesses that are overpriced. If you'd like to work with me to establish an opinion of value,
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that multiplier, those are the industry specific multipliers that we talk about. And yeah, that was a kind of a perfect example of how those multipliers are generated. So obviously he just talked about SDE is the total financial benefit that the seller gets from their business and that a buyer can expect to get out of the business as well. And these are these various add backs, or I'm sorry, different ways that it's talked about. So they may be doing some research and that way they would know that these are the same things. Bigger businesses often use EBITDA and EBIT and all these different things. Sellers' discretionary earnings is without question the best way to value small businesses. And I know small businesses, like different people have different interpretations of what small business is. Generally, we're talking about businesses that do less than about 1.5 million per year. They're considered Main Street lifestyle type businesses, owner operated businesses that we expect to continue as an owner operated business. And the reason that SDE is super important is you could have a business that has high revenue, but if they're not running the business well and their profitability isn't good, that business is worth way less than a business that's run very efficiently and financially benefits the owner a lot. So it's a really good way to do it. And again, I think helping sellers understand that concept as early on as possible is important. Yeah, these are all the ad backs. It is super important that they're properly documented in order to take those ad backs. And just if they're not documenting it, they should. These are some of the types of expenses that are often benefit an owner that are run through the business. And just to give you some sense. And then just to kind of close the loop on this, that for them to understand, you get the seller's discretionary earnings. They would work with the small business, the SBDC, to get their multiplier. But you take the SDE times the multiplier, and that helps establish the value for the goodwill. As we've talked about, often there's a range. Maybe it's 1.5 to 2, and that gives you the range, and then you would need to make a determination where to price the goodwill. So different stakeholders have different interpretations of what legitimate add backs are. The seller will add back a bunch. The buyer is going to ask for the financials, and they may not allow some of those add backs. And then a banker is going to allow for even less. So an example is you pay your nephew $60,000 to do a job that on the open market you would only need to pay someone $35,000 or $40,000. So you would make that add back, whereas the bank probably would disallow that. So just an example of things that may affect the seller's ability to get financing because of choices that they've made about running things through their business. So just advise them to, if they're getting ready to sell, to really consider those things. So in summary, as a seller is getting ready to sell their business, they want to clean up their financials. They want to make more money on paper, train their staff so that a buyer is buying kind of a self-sustaining business that isn't as perhaps reliant on the seller. And there are some businesses that are 100% reliant on the seller. It's, 1 or 2 person shop. That's the reality of it. But if it is possible, certainly train management. With regards to the selling process, encourage them to work with an accountant as early as possible to, hopefully CBIT is available, but an accountant would help them with the valuation work and that kind of thing. Again, this idea of understanding the valuation and how important it is so that they can make good choices about how they want to proceed. Vetting buyers as early as possible, that they don't spend time with unqualified or truly, disinterested, not interested buyers. The financing piece, really think long and hard about the concept of offering seller financing. It is likely to increase your pool of buyers, get you more money, and speed up the timeline. The value of the business, each component of the business needs to be valued. And in our valuation session, we'll walk through, in detail how to value the goodwill, considerations around how to value inventory, how to value the FF&E, and other aspects. And then just this concept of seller's discretionary earnings. And it really is the best way to value a small business. So understanding that early on is important. The SDE, kind of what it is, how you calculate it, and just questioning some of the add backs that are done, and a seller should proceed accordingly. And that is that. So that is that's the content that would be in the that first session. So thoughts, comments on does it feel like a manageable amount of content that you can share with with your constituents, be it in a one-on-one situation or in a small group environment? Are there too many concepts there? Are there too few? I'd love feedback just to be able to make adjustments before I send this out to all of you.
I think it sounds great. I was actually just thinking that, we've been talking for a while and I haven't been able to nail down a date with the Circle Court because they're having multiple full-time jobs, but to take this content and do our own webinar, just have them as a special guest rather than maybe a presenter might be easier.
Yeah, I mean, what I was kind of thinking, and Danny can chime in here, once you have this content, right, you can start engaging with your clients and constituents, and even start hosting your own sessions to go through this content with them. Danny, is that okay? Or do we want to be able to offer the three? Okay, so we're okay. I know we want to try to do the kind of the 3 in succession, but in a couple of months you'll have the valuation piece, then in a couple of months you'll have the other piece. So that was another reason why I kind of liked this idea of getting this content, because people have asked several times for the presentation, and now you would have the presentation, the notes, the instructor guide to go along, and that kind of thing.
And if you want to do it asynchronously, you want to do the one, if you feel ready and you want Kim to sit in and do a session with you earlier than the September beginning of the working groups, that's totally fine. You got somebody that wants to do it, great. We'll support you in doing it however works best for your constituent.
Anybody else? Content, do people feel like the content is sufficient? Do we go too deep on things? Maybe not deep enough for this first brush?
I thought it was terrific. I really did enjoy it.
Okay, thanks. And if you want to give me, feedback in an email or whatever, cool. So let me just show you what our plans are for next. Hold on. All right. I'm going to send out the content, the instructor's manual. I might put like a review sheet together to kind of just make sure, kind of the equivalent of cue cards to just get you thinking about different things. Prior to our next session, I will set up 2 Q&A sessions, one the week before our next session and then one the week of our next session, to answer any questions that you might have about the content as you kind of go through. And certainly feel free to email me or whatever if you have questions. But during our next training, which is the last Thursday of May, and it's actually like May 25th or something, whatever it is, each of you will be asked to present 8 to 10 minutes worth of content. We're going to break out into groups of 3. And within those groups of 3, you'll be asked to present 8 to 10 minutes worth of content, a certain amount of content. And you're not going to know what that content is until you get into the breakout session. So you're going to need to be pretty familiar with all of the content. And it's only 3 people, so this is maybe a little overly complicated, but kind of the idea is in the first 8 to 10 minutes, one person in the group presents, the other 2 individuals kind of listen and assess the presenter. We'll give you some considerations with regards to how you want to assess the presenter, and then 3 to 5 minutes, just provide some feedback to that presenter around. It could be energy level, it could be familiarity with the content. You could discuss questions that you have about the content, that kind of thing, and then it would go to the next presenter. And again, one thing I will say that's been kind of interesting is, I think that's the last, yeah. So question, it's a very different experience to build slides that somebody else is going to present. I can kind of I kind of know what I'm going to say, and the slides might but I'm like, wow, this needs to be really clear and really kind of straightforward. And so it's been kind of an interesting process for me to go through and create the slides that all of you will share. So does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns about how we'll do our next breakout?
So you're
I just
going to
have
give
a
us the topic, and then we're just going to shift into a breakout room. And are we presenting the slides, or are we just talking about the topic?
No, you'll have the slides.
Okay.
You'll have the slides. So you'll be able to speak from the slides.
Okay.
And hopefully there's a level of familiarity so that you're not just reading from the slides, because that's no fun for anybody. Is everybody okay with that?
And just a quick additional comment, some of the other resources that we built over the last couple of years, and other webinars and information from some of our partners. Like there was a really great, Kim and I've talked about that there's a really great program from Democracy at Work Institute, which is like how to assess if a business is ready to start thinking about transitioning, and some other things. So we're going to start sharing some additional resources and hopefully have some guest speakers of these as well as we go forward.
Yeah, that is the plan. I had hoped to have a guest speaker today talk about best practices, but one didn't feel comfortable and I didn't hear back from the other. So that is actually, if you know of folks who have sold their businesses that would be willing to come and just share their experience, lessons learned, like what they learned through the process, what they thought worked really well, what if they had to do it again, they would change, 5 to 10 minutes, really casual, that would be fabulous, because people that have lived through it are certainly have insights that are super helpful. If you know of anybody, just shoot me an email or Danny, and we can reach out to them. Maybe Circle Court folks. Cool. I think that's it for today. And again, any questions or comments, let me know. We will make the recording available for everyone, and yeah, for the folks that that weren't able to make it today. Alrighty, guys. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cam.
See ya.